Well, hello everybody. Thank you for coming. Today I'm going to be actually talking about connecting in a healthy way in relationships. Now, I'm not going to be able to give you all the information that you desperately need, but I am going to give you just some information and information on where to go when you need it, okay? So I work a lot with families, and I hear parents all the time talk about, I wish my child came with a manual, right? What I don't hear very often is couples saying, I wish that this relationship came with a manual. But that's almost what we need. You know, when we start out in life, the way we learn to communicate is through people that we see, our parents, our friends, society kind of dictates, TV, all that kind of stuff. It's all changing now that we've got TikTok, Instagram, right? Facebook. But we learn from what we see around us. And at some point in your life, you start to realize that you present yourself in a certain way with other people. And when we get into a relationship, I hear this all the time. This is a romantic version of what marriage is. I'm one half and my partner's the other half, and we come together and we're a whole. And, you know, I'm going to challenge that because you are not one half. You are a whole person, and you're coming together with a whole person, and you're creating this beautiful relationship. With that comes all kinds of history and sometimes baggage and experiences. And when the two of you come together, you create this dynamic that we call, you create this cycle, let's say, your own personal dynamic when you communicate. Sometimes it works and sometimes it doesn't. And when it doesn't, we can have conflict. And that's when we generally see most of our clients, when they haven't been able to figure it out. So I want to talk a little bit about what that looks like. Now, we practice EFT here at Arizona Relationship Institute, and that's emotion-focused therapy. So EFT tries to break through the minutia of life. Sometimes when we have couples approach, they have conflict, and it's often like a ping pong match. Will you do this? Will you do that? And it just goes back and forth, and it's not very productive. What we want to do is, when we practice EFT, we want to kind of go behind the minutia. We want to go where it's quiet, where it's safe. When we talk about the emotion of what's going on rather than the behavior of what's going on, then that's doable. We can talk about that. So one of the things that we look at with EFT is your cycle. So let's do a little brief picture here. It looks like an infinity sign. Have you guys seen that before? Right? Infinity, it goes on and on. In this cycle, we tend to put little arrows on here because this is one person and here's another person. Husband, wife, father, son, mother, daughter, whatever it is. Sometimes when we are, let's say we're working with a couple, there is something brought up, some thought, some controversial subject, something, a feeling, anything like that. This person brings something up, this one responds this way. And when this one responds this way, this is how this one feels. When this one feels this way, this is how the reaction is and this is how they feel. And when that happens, we end in this place right up here. This is the fight, flight, freeze. Denise talked about it earlier. This is where in your brain, the amygdala, it fires and it's trying to protect you. So when you're in this place, you either fight, and that means you're not afraid to step into it and try to work it out. You can freeze, which means you don't fight and you don't pull away, you stand there and you kind of deal with whatever the conversation is. Or you flight, you run, you're a runner. It's not safe to be here, I'm out. So we do one of those things. And then We go back to the cycle again. Something else comes up and we go back and forth, back and forth. Now there's a lot more to this cycle that I would love to share, but I don't have time. But because of this cycle, there's an important piece that's missing right here for both of you. And that is the need that you have in the relationship. It's the attachment need. And that's what we talk about with EFT, is what is that need that you have? Communication with one another. It's difficult because we assume the worst. Our fears teach us to assume the worst in the other person. Oh, well, they think this. Or, oh, he's going to do that, or she's going to do that. We don't really know, but we assume it. If we can turn this thing around and assume the best, that's probably more likely what's going to happen, because your partner isn't really wanting to be in this negative place, and neither are you. So when we talk about EFT, we talk about focusing on connection. Connection is really important. When we have disagreements, we want to be able to understand what the other person is feeling and thinking, and it's hard to do because we just talked about that. It's hard to be able, when you're in an intense place, to be able to see this thing in a connecting, loving way. That's what we talk about in EFT. One of the things that I've noticed too is that we spend a lot of time in the past thinking about all the stuff that's happened in the past, the stuff that he did or she did to me, the stuff in childhood. We spend a lot of time in the future where I'm so worried about this. I'm afraid he's going to do this or she's going to do this. And both of those places, we have no power. The past has happened and we can't change it. We can try to understand it, and we do that. But there's no power there. The future, it's not even real. The things that we're worried about haven't happened yet. We're punishing ourselves with anxiety about what might happen. Where all of your power is right here and right now in this little bubble in the present. That's where you get to make changes. That's where you can change your thinking, where you can connect. So when you think about where all your power is, you think, right now, wherever I am, whatever I'm doing, this is where I can make my moves. Is everybody with me? Okay, good. Any questions? I just want to put out there that a lot of what we do with EFT is, it's a process. It takes a long time to get you where you are, to get you to come into counseling, to get you to want to change what you're doing. And so you have to be patient with yourself and your partner, and you've got to give yourself some time. It's taken all this time to get here. Give yourself a little time to get out of here. All right? Also, the Hold Me Tight seminar, we hold them once every quarter. They're incredibly effective. You come in, it's almost like what we do on steroids. You come in here and you get this huge dose of how to connect, and you get to practice, and you get the most wonderful information. And you can use it when you're in sessions. You can use it right away. So I suggest anybody who wants to learn how to connect to another person, go to the Hold Me Tight seminar. Okay, well, I know that the desire that we all have is to connect to our partners. That's what we really want. And sometimes it's hard to do that because of blocks that you have, because of blocks that they have. And the idea is to be able to step outside of yourself and to see where your partner is. I know that you guys have heard the 5 love languages, right? Most people have heard it. It was this big fad where you find your love language. The interesting thing is the love language isn't necessarily for you. When you find your love language, it's information for your partner to be able to connect to you in the way that works. When I first got married, my husband, he gave me fresh cut flowers for Valentine's Day. And I took them graciously and I said, thank you so much. They're beautiful. We put them in a vase. We put them on the table. And then after that, I told him, honey, I don't really like cut flowers. And I'll tell you why. They just die a slow death on the table, and I just can't do that. So I told him that. I said, I love that you did it. That isn't what I want, you know? And so we were able to talk about that. What do you think he did next Valentine's Day?
Fresh cut flowers again.
No, not fresh cut flowers again. He bought me a rose bush. And that rose bush is still in our backyard, and every year that it comes up, it reminds me that he actually listened, and he heard me, and he knew I don't want him to die a slow death in front of me, just on the branch. Naturally, organically. You can die organically. But that's a wonderful lesson because, you know, being able to hear our partner is one of the biggest things that you can do as a partner. Being able to step outside of yourself. If I could give advice to do one thing in a conversation, it would be to validate your partner. And that means, you know, validation doesn't mean you agree. And it doesn't mean that you get to just stroke the ego. Validation is, hey, I hear what you're saying. This is my interpretation of what you just said. You're sad because. You feel angry because. And once you do that and you show them that you're with them, you get it, you understand it, then they're in. They feel safer to come into the conversation, right? And then when they do that, then you can present, this is how I'm feeling. And then you both are in a much better place. And we teach your partner how to validate so that you feel validated and you feel safe coming into a conversation, right? There's this really great tool that I use. It's called the LOVE acronym. And it's for couples when they have hard things to talk about, especially couples that talk over each other because they feel like they need to defend themselves, you know? You jump in, you say, that's not true. I didn't do that, right? It's those kind of conversations. Or conversations where somebody needs some time to process or to be able to say what they really think or feel. It also is for couples where they talk so fast and their conversations are really quick. We know emotions are quicker than your cognitive functioning, right? So if you take a nice deep breath, your cognition comes and catches up to your emotion, and then you could be a little bit more rational. That's why we spend a lot of time apologizing when we're mad, because we blah when we're mad, right? So the LOVE acronym, it's LUV. L is listen. So we are having a conversation, my husband and I want to tell him something. I want to start the conversation. I want him to listen to me. And that means active listening. That means I'm going to pay attention to what she looks like, her words that she chooses. I'm going to stay focused. I'm not going to think about what I'm going to do after she's finished talking, right? Sometimes we're coming up with what we're going to say next, and we're not listening to the rest of the conversation. So listening, I mean, it takes counselors months and months and months to master, not even master, to just get it, active listening, because we need to be present for you, right? And that's what we want you to do in your conversation. So listen. So my husband's listening to me. He's listening to the words I say. I get to share. But it doesn't mean I get to dump for 3 hours. Let's stick with one subject at a time. So you share the subject, and then my husband understands, which is the U. It's not L-O-V-E, it's L-U-V. So listen, and now we're understanding. And understanding means, okay, so honey, what I heard you say was, and then I go through it, or he goes through it. Now, if he didn't get it right, then I say, no, well, you got most of it. This part was wrong, or this part wasn't quite right. And then I share again that part. So then he understands it. This is going to help so much with the misunderstandings. Do you ever get that? Where your husband or wife doesn't understand you? You say one thing and they think a totally different thing. That actually, just that one thing that you do, that reflecting, that makes everything a lot more clearer. And then V. Most couples, if they get to understanding, they generally don't get to validating. V is validating. And that is, okay, I heard what you were saying. And you know what? By the way you're feeling and how you described it, I totally understand why you were upset. I see why you don't feel like I was listening because of what I was doing. I get that. So validating means that you get where they're coming from, like we talked about before. And a subset of the validation is repair. And most couples really don't get to repair. And repair is, you know what? From now on, whenever we start talking about this, that, or the other thing, I'm going to do this, that, or the other thing. So you're repairing, you're giving them hope that, okay, they get it. And now, when we move forward, he's going to make an effort not to do that. And there's hope in that connection. And this is just one example of what you can do when you talk to your spouse. So that's an example of how we can start to create healthy communication in our relationships. We have lots to talk about, so if you have any questions, come in and talk to the counselors here. Any questions now?
Do you do EFT with couples right away when they come in?
When couples do come in to see us, the first thing we do is we do start working the EFT program. We start figuring out what are the emotions going on here? What's happening here? Otherwise, we would be a traditional talk therapy approach, and we're not. We're very different. So what we want to do is to be able to sit down with you. We also talk to you individually just once, and then we're together moving forward. So we do EFTs right away. We don't necessarily jump into this. Sometimes we do. And sometimes we actually map out their cycle because these cycles are very individual to you as a couple. It's not one size fits all, right? So we do walk through and map that out. Yes?
What within the cycle are some examples of some unmet attachment needs?
Okay, so after, let's say you bring something up, I'm always doing the dishes. You don't do anything in the house. Bam! Probably met with defensiveness. I work every day and I mow the lawn sometimes, and that's good. Then there's this being dismissed, this feeling, this reaction to that, right? And saying, that's not fair. And then you dig deeper into what isn't fair in the relationship. Now there's more defensiveness. Maybe there's shutdown. Maybe there's, no, I want to talk about this. No, I don't. And then it doesn't work. You guys are in the red at that point. What do you think the unmet need is? What do you think? It could be, I am not appreciated. It could be, I'm not important. I don't have control. I'm not listened to. I'm not loved. I'm being dismissed, something like that. So that's examples of what that unmet need could be. Now, if we change this to a positive cycle, just the result would be, I am loved. I am important. You know? I am appreciated. So that's an example. Anything else? Well, thank you so much and happy communication.